So if we take a look at this graph titled Drug-Related Arrests Are Rising Again, we notice that there's a spike in around 2007 on this graph from 2002 to 2018 with FBI data, perfectly accurate arrest records. And it starts to go down. But in 2015, it spikes again and it heads into 2018 and there's no sign of stopping this new slant for drug arrests. And the problem is that when we make these many arrests, the prisoners just go into prisons and are overcrowded. And when situations like COVID happen, we suffer in ways where, or they suffer in ways where it's pretty much inhumane keeping them in a facility where they all just trade the virus with each other. So you can see that in 2018, 1,654,282 of more than 10 million total arrests in the entire United States were these drug abusers, which is 16 to 17% of the total arrests, which this is incredibly important because from that same exact New York Times article, the author, Susan Stellan, writes in her last bit of this quote, that meanwhile, while the drug abuse is rising, arrests for violent crime and property crime have continued to trend downwards, which we should be concerned because if drug abusers are going upwards, these other crimes are going downwards, which means that the simple solution that we are going to propose is much more evident, which is rehabilitation over incarceration, which means that we believe that we should be sending these criminals to rehab, actual rehab, instead of jamming them in a cell and waiting for their addiction to go away. So in this presentation, we're going to be going over 5 different things. The first bit will be an informative bit about why drug addiction is a disease. Secondly, we'll be going over rehabilitation instead of prison, why we should be doing that in the first place. Then we're going to go over why we should, or how we're going to be keeping users from returning to prison and why they're returning to prison right now so often. Fourth, we're going to go over what other countries have done. And fifth, we're going to incorporate what other countries have done and all of our other points into steps we can take in order to help abusers in conflicts personally and also as a country. So first off, why drug addiction is disease and not an addiction. This is all from the American Addiction Centers. And they kind of quote that addiction has been described as a medical disorder that affects the brain and changes behavior. And surely if overcoming addiction were as easy as simply choosing to stop, the problem of addiction would be much easier to address and relapse would not be as common. And the word addiction is incorrect here because it's such an ambiguous, and as it says at the bottom, uncertain definition, and it also has negative stigma. And the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Addiction Centers want to remove that. And so they want to use the word substance use disorder, which is in the bottom middle portion of the third bullet point, because it sounds more compulsive and habitual and not as negative and kind of like you can brush it off your shoulder. Instead, it sounds like something we need to treat with rehabilitation, which we do truly believe. And what you should be taking from all of those long text bits from the American Addiction Center is that drug addiction is a disorder and disease. It does require medical attention and it should require medical attention. And it cannot be treated as effectively from within a prison as Tim's going to go over in this next bit.